25th, 2022 meeting of the High Point Regional Board of Ed to order. Stand for a flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Open Public Meetings Act statement. New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Augusta, Branchville, and Sussex post offices, and notice sent to the New Jersey Herald, the Advertiser North, and the Clerk of the boroughs of Branchville and Sussex, and the townships of Frankfort, Lafayette, and Wantage. Our mission statement. High Point Regional High School, in partnership with staff, family, and community, is dedicated to the quest for individual excellence. By fostering high standards of achievement, we prepare students to become responsible and productive members of a diverse society. I call for a roll call.
Sure. Mr. Arnold?
Here.
Mr. Concord?
Here.
Mr. Carrazza?
Here.
Mr. Dunn?
Here.
Miss Ireland? Here. Mr. Klein?
Here.
Miss Schumann?
Here.
Miss Smith? Here. And Mr. Cronin is absent. And Dr.
Here.
Okay.
A motion will now be made that the High Point Regional High School Board of Education enter executive session to provide an update on legal, personnel, and negotiations items which are exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, the Open Public Meetings Act. Any discussions held by the board which need not remain confidential will be made public when appropriate. Minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. The board will reconvene in public session in person and virtually at the conclusion of the executive session. It is not anticipated that any action will be taken. And we expect that to be approximately 7 p.m. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now in executive session.
All right.
Santa comes to you, like on a guy.
Okay, may I have a motion to return to public session, please?
Motion.
In a second?
Yeah.
Wait here a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now in public session. Returning to our agenda, we have no unfinished business, so we'll proceed to approval of minutes, the regular meeting minutes from March 21st, 2022, and executive session meeting minutes from March 21, 2022. I have a roll call? Or
Random
actually, any motion on approval of those minutes?
Motion.
Any discussion or comments? Now may I have a roll?
All right. Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Concord?
Yes.
Mr. Carrazza?
Yes.
Miss Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Miss Schumann?
Yes.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes. That brings us to our first public comment session of the evening on agenda items only. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, we will open the public comments for agenda items only at this time. Each speaker should state his or her name and address. You will have 3 minutes to address the board, which will be timed by the board president or designee. We will limit this session to no longer than 45 minutes. Please be respectful and mindful that your comments are being recorded. And we have a slight change on our virtual platform for the evening. So anyone present here obviously is able to come make public comments at the podium. In the past, we've had a way of being recognized by raising your virtual hand to make public comments. We do not have that available at this time. I believe what we have in its place is the ability to send in a comment to a particular email address that we will monitor. And that email address, Mr. Yardley?
It's virtual board meeting at hpregional.org.
Okay.
It will come through.
I'm wondering if that's something we can display somewhere.
Yeah, I'll put it up on the
Okay.
on the site on the live stream link so that they can email to that address.
Yeah, wonderful.
Great job, thank you.
Thanks for your quick reaction time on that. We'll start with public comments in person here. So if anybody then, we'll give that opportunity for the virtual attendees. So we'll see that online. And we'll hear from them second. So if there's anyone in person that would like to make a public comment on our agenda items, please feel free to come to the podium. Okay, well, so we'll give it a minute or two. We'll monitor the that email address to see if anything comes in. And in the meantime, I'll just remind everyone that we have a second public comment session at the end of our agenda that is not limited to agenda items. So if you miss an opportunity in this first section, feel free. And that email address we'll be receiving throughout the evening, right? So if you have something you want to submit, we'll have that ready for the next section. Nothing?
Nothing yet.
May I have a motion to close the first public comment session?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. All right, so on to our presentations. The first presentation is the public hearing on the final 2022-2023 budget. Dr. Ripley.
He boxed me in. I'll get there.
Guess I made it up.
Too tight?
I have people looking, so.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. So there's a picture of our beautiful facility, one that we take great pride in and one in which our community takes great pride. And something that we want to leave to future generations. So let's talk about this coming year budget. All right. As you see here, there's a lot of words. Sorry, usually words on a screen during a presentation are off-putting, so I will not read to you. Oh, what happened? Was that me? There we go. All right, so if we look here, the state aid reductions continue. This is year 6 of the state aid reductions. Initially, as I've stated to you before, and I'm speaking to you, I'm sorry if I'm in any way showing you my back. As I've stated before, initially the state stated that they would take $2.7 million away from our state aid. At the time, we were receiving what's referred to as equalization aid. What that generally is, equalization aid is the compilation of all the assessed value within the sending district community, the assessed value of property. And it also factors in the number of students. All right? So that 2.7 million, which was originally slated to have been reduced, this year, which is year 6, we have 2 more years to go, we have exceeded 3.1 million. So, High Point used to get $5.1 million in equalization aid. This year, we received $1.9 million in equalization aid. We are hopeful that after 2 more years, they don't zero that out, because that would be even more catastrophic than what we've already been dealing with. And so this year, while we had anticipated a greater number than 584,000, that's what the state aid reduction was this year. So you could say, well, how come you didn't know it was 584? Well, the formula, which is referred to as S2 by the state, was developed in approximately 2006. How they derive or arrive at that formula is a mystery. A consortium of school districts from around the state, including High Point, filed an OPRA request, Open Public Records Act, to communicate how they come to that formula. It's never been released, in spite of the fact that the OPRA request is in place. And so we don't know how it works out. We don't know how High Point loses 584,000, and a school like Mount Olive, which is a lovely school, I don't know if you've ever been to Mount Olive, it's like a palace. Someone showed me around that school. They just put in a brand new multi-field turf field that is like their 3rd one they have. They have a dome for which I think they're putting in a jumbotron. I'm not making this up. Now let me give you an example of why that can be so difficult to stomach from our local community. They're getting over $1 million extra funding this year. And in education, because it's a government system, you can't just spend properly 1.5 extra million year over year. You have to have that planned out. It takes time. You can't just, there's only so many Chromebooks one can buy. So if that, essentially, you have to do something with that 1.5 million, so let's put up a jumbotron. And I know I'm sounding somewhat flippant, but this is an issue that I don't know how is being allowed throughout the state. There is effectively backing up the brakes truck to a school like Mount Olive, who doesn't necessarily have a plan to spend that money while they're reducing local communities like High Point, Hapakong, Kittatinny, significant amounts of money. And what happens, what's the impact of that? What does that effectively do? It raises the local tax levy, because you still have to provide an appropriate public education. But without the money, you therefore have to go to 2%, as the next line says. 2% tax levy, which equates to $338,000. So, as we see, we're losing 584, which actually is a reduction from last year. Last year we lost 797,000. So you can see that the 2% tax levy increase at 338,000 is more than taken up by the state aid reduction. So I think a month ago someone asked me how much we've lost. I erroneously said 4 million. In my head I was thinking 4 million because I was thinking that that was what might be cumulative. I was wrong. At this point it's 3.1 million. I'm hopeful we don't get to 5 million. I'm hopeful that the next 2 years are approximately where we're at now, but that's wishful thinking. I'll give you an example. Hapakong, I don't even know how they're going to keep their doors open. They've been cut so much. It's really tragic, where you have some schools getting more because the governor, and I'm not playing politics, the governor puts forward a budget that increases educational funding. But the manner in which that money is distributed is the compelling factor. So a community like High Point, we are losing funding, and that must therefore come from the local community. And so really what it is redistribution of wealth. What was formerly $5 million that was brought to High Point is now $1.9 million. So the state has redistributed that $3.1 million elsewhere. All right. Now, what I don't have on this slide, and I'll show you on a different slide, is, okay, that's great. That tells us how much money you lost, how much the state has taken from you and your tax levy. But what are you spending? I'm trying. There we go. I'll get to what we're spending in a second. This is a pie graph of where the money goes. Salaries and benefits generally are combined, which tends to be the highest expenditure. However, salaries have been reduced year over year from last year's budget to this year's budget. It will be reduced by more than $202,000 or 3.5% reduction in salaries. Now, how did you do that? Did you negotiate a reduction of 3.5%? No. When people retire, we're not replacing them. It's the only way to manage these significant state aid reductions is to reduce in the areas that are the largest areas. Benefits have gone up. Benefits went up $180,000 year over year. I'm sorry, $140,000. Transportation. We are the largest district geographically in the state. We spend a lot of money on transportation. And this is not a discretionary item, right? You can't say, well, we're not going to transport those kids. Several years ago, there was a discussion, I remember out here, and I think it was in 2011, in the cafeteria, where they were talking about getting rid of courtesy busing. You know what courtesy busing means? Anybody who lives within 2 miles technically does not have to be transported. You want your kids walking on these streets for 2 miles? Of course you don't. So this idea that courtesy busing is a luxury is great if you live in somewhere else. But when you live at High Point, transportation is an absolute non-discretionary cost. And transportation has gone up this year, year over year, $265,000. So we're managing diminishing resources while expenses that are non-discretionary continue to rise. Dan, can you just forward it for me too, because I'm frustrated. All right. General fund, Fund 11. This is what the current budget is. This is what we are budgeting for this year. We're therefore reducing overall spending by $908,000. Appropriations means this is how much money we're going to need. So, and this is what we're going to get. Special revenue, these are federal grants. Federal grants this year we're getting less year over year, $45,000, for a total budget, operating budget. This is not taxes, but this is the total High Point operating budget is being reduced year over year by almost $954,000. So, I know that the taxes are going up 2%, but the spending is dropping by almost $1 million. Just to give you context, that fiscal responsibility does not singularly mean tax levy, as much as I know how much that impacts the local community. All right, moving forward. All right, here's budgeted revenues. What the heck? All right, so this can be somewhat convoluted. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still struggle sometimes to understand. So what's this first line? Fund balance. Why is it so much more? Let me give you an example. At the end of the year, let's say you budget $23 million. At the end of the year, you're going to have spent $23 million exactly. When you run your own home, you budget a certain amount. Are you going to hit that exact number? Hopefully it's less than, right? We can't deficit spend like the federal government. So anything that we spend less than what was budgeted can go into this, what's called a fund balance. It's also referred to as a surplus, but surplus seemingly is a dirty word because people think that you're overtaxing them and hiding it, right? But let me give you an example. So this year, there's a possibility we could end up with less than $100,000 left over at the end of the year. You understand the fraction that is when the budget is $23 million? All right, so this year, from last year, we're utilizing money that was left over, and what I mean by that is what's referred to as fund balance. Money that we didn't spend from last year, we are utilizing that money left over to fund this year's budget. Does that make sense? We could also go up two other places with that money. We could go to capital reserve, or we can go to maintenance reserve. Capital reserve right now, we are in good shape. We funded capital reserve to almost what the cap allows, and we have sufficient maintenance reserve. So what we need to do is recognize that we still have 2 more years of acute budget cuts from the state. And so that money that if we finish with anything left at the end of the year, we want to be able to use that to fund the next year's budget, if that makes any sense. All right, here's the tax levy. Last year was this year's what it is, an increase of 2% or $338,000. Tuition from Montague, that means the number of students that Montague sends to High Point. Year over year, that too is going down. Students from Montague can go to Tech, they can go elsewhere, they can choose choice schools, and this must be a lower class of numbers this year, so we're losing $280,000 of revenue from Montague, another significant impact relative to the state aid cuts. All right, miscellaneous adjustment prior year encumbrances. What does that mean? What this means is any PO, purchase order, that was executed prior to June 30th, for which the product or service was not provided prior to June 30th, still has to get paid, but it gets paid in the next year, right? So that's where are we? That number is. So last year, we had this much, we anticipate this much, or a reduction. So that's actually to the benefit, hopefully, that we have to pay out less in the coming year. State aid choice, that's a total, that's a combination. State aid and choice is dropping by 13.5%. or 584,000, we've already spoken about that. It does not mean they're dropping special education aid, transportation aid, but it is dropping what I referred to formerly as equalization aid. SEMI, which is Medicare reimbursement, is dropping by $268. This is a very small amount of money, and the amount of effort that it is to secure that amount of money is significantly greater than the amount of money you receive. But you can't turn down $21,000, irrespective of the amount of work that goes into it. What this is we can get reimbursed from Medicaid for OT, PT for students, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech services, services such as that, we can get reimbursed from Medicare, Medicaid, one of them. Medicare? Oh, it's right there. I know where to go. All right. Formerly last year, we had to ensure we got to 2%. We took $150,000 out of maintenance reserve so as to meet that 2%. We've subsequently put that in, so that's been taken care of. We're not doing that again. All right, so the subtotal of all revenues and they must be equal to appropriations is this special revenue fund 20, which was the aforementioned grants. And so what we have is a reduction of spending of $953,000 or almost 4%. So we're dropping the budget. Again, we're dropping spending. We're reducing spending, even though the tax levy is going up by 2%. And hopefully you're getting the sense of the reality is there's nothing we can do about it. We have 2 more years of state aid reductions. I'm hopeful that they continue not to be catastrophically high. I mean, $600,000 is a lot of money, and I'm hopeful that that reduces from there. All right, can you forward it one more? All right, now this is what generally the community wants to see, which is how is this going to affect my taxes? All right, so the taxes that each municipality pays is based upon the number of students that they send to High Point. And so if the taxes go up or down, it's based upon students. So Branchville is sending us 2 less students in the coming year than they are this year. Frankfurt is going to increase by 5. So what we see here is percent share, obviously, of 100% that they will be responsible of that $17 million tax levy. Does that make sense? Please ask any questions that you want answered. All right, Lafayette dropping by 5. That's a fairly significant percentage-wise. Sussex is increasing, and Wantage is also decreasing. So based upon these percentage shares and the number of students that are being sent to us, this does not include Montague, by the way. Why? Because Montague is not one of the 5 townships that send to High Point. We engage in what's referred to as send and receive for Montague students to come to High Point. So therefore, they pay us a tuition rate that's negotiated between the boards, but that does not appear, it did appear in revenue in the prior screen, but it does not appear in this because it's not calculated into the tax levy for the local community. All right, can you move that forward for me? Okay, this is the difference that each community will pay. So Branchville, they will pay $5,000 for all property owners will pay in total $5,000 more. So Frankfurt is on the hook for $314. Why? Because they have more students. I don't know that assessed value changed significantly year over year, but it may have changed slightly. All right? And you can see the relative increase. Even Sussex, as I mentioned earlier, is sending us, 3 or 5 more students? Therefore, their percentage increases because the number of students they're sending us increases. And that's all based on the tax levy, which is right there, and that's the increase on the tax levy. How have we reduced spending to this almost what equates to $1 million? Particularly when I've mentioned to you how much transportation and benefits and salaries have been addressed. So, transportation and benefits have gone up. So I did talk about salaries. We have reduced the number of staff from several years ago In 2014-15, we had 107 certificated staff members. Mind you, we had a lot more students. We're now down to, in this coming budget, 80.8. That's a significant reduction. We've reduced across the board to be able to make up the difference so as to maintain our responsibility for the tax levy and to maintain an appropriate, vibrant education that we want as a community. Look, part of the reason why, and I've spoken about this frequently, part of the reason we live where we live, we may like and enjoy the local community and the rural aspect of where we live, the bucolic surroundings, particularly the way that High Point looks, but we also want a good education for our kids. I have 5 kids who go to High Point. I'm not sure that that's a record, maybe it is, I don't know that they keep records on this. But I have 5 kids who come to High Point currently, and I've been in High Point for 25 years, and I live here. So I'm deeply passionate and committed. And I believe that it is acknowledged, and it is acknowledged even by those who believe themselves to be superior, namely a place like Sparta, who has a reputation of being such an exceptional school. They've acknowledged, although not openly, that our curriculum is superior. Part of the problem is when you reduce staff to the degree that we're forced to do so, it has a direct impact on that curriculum, and it has a direct impact on programs. And that's very, very disappointing. We're doing our best to limit the impact on students with this and subsequent budgets. I believe that that's the last slide. It is. Now, there's a lot of numbers and a lot of things that I've put up there and a lot of things that I may have said for which you may have a question. Please, any questions on all that's been presented?
I'll start. So, what I like how this is presented. This is the lump sum that each town is going, township or borough gets adjusted.
Yep.
But it may be slightly misleading in that this doesn't necessarily translate to the individual taxpayer.
Right.
What happens in each one of these municipalities, I think the county does this, is they adjust it in equalization ratio based upon relative values. It's fairly complex, but it does get posted. In the past, we put this out there because we know this part.
Right.
But then, by the time the tax bill comes to the individual taxpayer, it looks like somebody's going to be paying more, but end up they pay less.
Right.
Or somebody that looks like they're going to pay less pays a lot more because of those other factors that are outside of the school's control.
Yes, thank you. And that's why there's an asterisk there that perhaps I should have made font 30, that is an estimate. Actual may change slightly due to rounding and other factors based upon assessed value and other factors that we cannot possibly know on April 25th. This is an estimate. It should not be significantly different, but I know when we talk about tax dollars, because we're all dealing with inflation and we're dealing with increasing taxes, and we tend to say, well, what's the school providing, right? So when I look at my taxes, I say, I don't get garbage, we don't have police, and I'm not complaining. I understand that they have a difficult job to do, but there are things that we need to be mindful of, and we are mindful of the inflation and the cost to the local community. But as I stated before, when the state continues to reduce by 3.1 million, which may ultimately go to 5 million, there's only so much we can do. So when I talk about schools like Kittatinny suffering this year, I think they lost $1 million. Apacon, I think, lost 1.5 million. I don't know how they're going to stay open. It's really tragic. And I will tell you that even when this first came out, I met with legislators, I've met with lobbyist groups in Trenton, I've participated in them. There is not the will to come to our aid, if you will. And that's tragic because what's the argument? We've increased educational spending across the state. What's the problem? The problem is it has had a significant impact on the local Sussex County communities, and High Point being one of them. it does not diminish the will of our teachers and our administrators to provide a world-class education to our kids. Look at the facilities that we have. Look at the teachers that we have, the curriculum that we have, the administrators. And I get, you know, when I speak about money, because money is so visceral to people, I get very passionate about education because I believe we provide a world-class education where the kids who come here are loved and taken care of, and we're providing this, and yet it's so emotional because we care so much, and yet we're in this position of diminishing resources. And so we have 2 more years of state aid reductions. We're hopeful to be able to present something like this the next 2 years where we're able to maintain as robust a curriculum and program structure as we do now. That is our hope, that is our plan, and we're deeply committed to that. Again, I tend to talk. Any other questions? Please feel free.
Is that $3.1 million figure, the reduction over 6 years, does that include this year's?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. It does. So that leaves us with 1.9 million left in equalization aid. I'm hopeful that the reduction is a percentage rather than zeroing it out, right? So I'm hopeful the reason why last year we had 797,000 reduced, and this year we dropped to only a reduction of 584,000. I'm hopeful it's a percentage, thereby the fact that it was formerly a percentage of 5.1 million, now it'll be a percentage of 1.9 million, therefore it'll be even less than 584 next year. Rather than say, hey, they got 1.9 million left in equalization aid, we'll cut 900,000 this year, $1 million next year, they'll be Chatham in 2 years. I only use Chatham because it's a wealthy community where I don't believe they get any equalization aid. And the demographics of High Point have changed in the last decade. And we're less affluent than we were a decade ago. All right.
One other point on the transportation, you had transportation costs in the pie chart. We do get transportation aid
We do.
from the state.
Mhm.
I don't recall what that number is off the top of my head. All I know is it's been unchanged for
Yeah, it has remained static.
all of the 5 years that there have been cuts in the equalization rate
Right.
aid.
Can you go back to that?
Which would be nice
So glad I
if
got
maybe,
this.
I don't know, gas prices remained
Right.
the same or bus driver
Transportation.
costs
Okay.
remain the same.
Which is 10%, but it continues to go up.
So the point that the costs continue to go up, but our aid from the state has been flat for
Yes.
5, 6
And that
years.
is- yes.
So
Effectively, we're losing aid there too.
transportation's been flat, has other schools' transportation went up with their budget, their state aid as well?
I have a piece of paper in my office that would answer that question. It is not in my head. I'm sorry, I could perhaps go get it to give you that answer, or I could get it, provide that answer.
Just,
I believe generally that they have not adjusted transportation aid, but I can't say that definitively without looking at that sheet that I have. But ours has remained generally static over the last several years, in spite of the fact that transportation costs are exploding. I'll give you an example. It's almost impossible to become a bus driver in the Western Hemisphere, because what they've done is put regulations on obtaining the CDL license, where you have to be able to explain, understand, and fix a internal combustion engine while driving down the road. And it doesn't make sense. And so what's happened is the market drives the salary. So because there's so few bus drivers, salaries have had to go up so as to maintain the people who you have to go, what's the word I'm looking for, Fran? You have to go,
Purchase service?
go an outside purchase service to a vendor and say, can you please provide this bus route for us? And that's higher than it would cost if you did it internally. Plus, as you all know, you're not paying $1.91 per gallon, right? You're paying $3.93, $3.95 more. If you have diesel, forget it. And so this this is that with which we contend, transportation costs. And if we have a student who needs to be transported to another county, that's part of our responsibility.
Dr. Rigley, on another note, that when you have a student in a classroom, right, whether or not you have 2 students or 20 students, you need a teacher, you need a nurse, you need the electricity on, you need all that. Where do those, that doesn't change, you still need all those things, right, all those fixed costs, so where do they fall in your pie chart?
What, general education or?
I guess just as a rule, like, is that a combination of the benefits and the maintenance and the?
Well, yeah, it is, it's encapsulated.
All other-
It's encapsulated in all of that.
Yeah.
And so what happens is every year, people will go onto a website and say, what's the cost per pupil?
Right, and
ours is going to, why? Because the number of pupils is dropping,
Right.
so we'll likely, even though we just, as I just showed you, we reduced our overall budget by $954,000 this year, but because we're losing students, we may not see a requisite drop in our per pupil cost.
Right, in
I
fact,
will-
it might go up because you are now spreading the
it
cost out
might.
amongst fewer students.
It might, I don't know that the number of students has dropped significantly enough that it won't still go down, because $954,000 is not a small amount.
Right,
I think that's 3.85%, I could be wrong. So the reality is that for many years, we were dropping our per pupil cost because we were reducing the tax levy and we were reducing spending. But the state didn't tell us that they were about to take $5 million from us, or $4 million, or $3 million. And so when we were reducing spending, because our student population was dropping, we didn't know what was coming. And so that's been a challenge. Furthermore, people will say, okay, we reached almost 1,500 students here in 2007, I believe. It might have been 1,491, approximately 1,500. We're nowhere near that. I think I showed something where we're below 800. We'll be below 800. So it's a 40+ reduction in students. Now, that doesn't mean that the budget can be reduced by 40% because you have 40% less students. It doesn't work that way. And I'm not trying to sell you snake oil. I'm just telling you that there's no way to reduce the requisite cost just because the number of students, because you still need to provide transportation routes, the building still costs money, the teachers, everything still costs, it's not requisite. So what we try to do is demonstrate a reduction in spending, which we've done by reducing spending by almost $1 million this year, even though your taxes are going up.
I just wanted to say one thing on a positive note, that the largest piece of the pie chart here are the salaries for our teachers, and that's our greatest asset at this school, are the quality of the teachers. And if you look at one of the agenda items tonight is to approve their salaries. These are teachers who have been here for many, many years. We have quality new teachers, and then we have many, and you could speak to it better than I could, but who have decided to remain at this school for 12 and more years, many, the majority. And they are master teachers and just excellent. So despite the cuts, we have such quality staff here that they are going to keep the school moving in a positive direction regardless. So I just wanted to say that.
So I'll say, I've said this before, the reason I ran and became a part of this board was because a couple of years ago, there was a 14% increase, and I have a pretty good business sense, and I felt like maybe if I got involved that I could help change things. And I'm on the finance committee now, and as a board member, I'm not sure if the public understands this, but when you're a board member and you're on a committee, you're overseeing, but you're not making decisions, and the decisions are made here when we vote, and if everyone votes yes and I vote no, it makes no difference. That being said, when we discussed the finances, and this presentation was kind of everything in a nutshell, I look at it like the school's hands are tied, right? And as the state draws money away and the budget is decreasing, you can look at the first slide, and that's a pretty good presentation of where that money is going away. It's a difficult situation. And in the background, that not everyone's realizing there's people retiring because of situations that during COVID and all these things that have gone on in the past years, trying to continue the same education at this school has become very difficult. So I think where we are and what the administration has been handed, this is the best way to handle it at this point.
Any other comments from the board?
Generally, in the past, I know it's not necessarily protocol, because we do have times for public questions, but before I move on, I don't want anyone to feel as if I'm avoiding anything, and I know it's not necessarily protocol, but if anybody had a quick question for clarity, I could certainly entertain it for a minute or two. Yes, ma'am?
I walked in late.
Okay.
I'm a little confused about what you were just saying. I'm sorry.
Rich.
Rich, okay. I do like what I just heard from coming in, that you're using knowledge about maybe all of us looking at it in ways, but I don't know exactly what we are walking into, because I do know that I've got some questions coming into tonight.
Did you have questions on the budget specifically, or?
The budget's one thing, because I wonder about all the newcomers coming in, and
I'm not sure
as
what
taxpayer,
you're referring to there.
like, okay, we got all
There's,
the new.
actually, if you wanna just back up the slide real quick, you could show the newcomers, like, you have a slide of the differences he can show you. And
So-
it's-
So really what the presentation, if you go back to slide 1, is a demonstration that state aid reduction, again, was $584,000 this year, and it now exceeds $3 million. And we've dropped our spending this year by almost $1 million. So the tax levy is going up by 2% because we have no choice because of the state aid reductions, in spite of the fact that we are still reducing spending by almost $1 million. And you can certainly ask questions
Yeah,
later.
yeah, there is another public comment session later on this evening. We have a number of other presentations I want to make sure we get to. We have some very patient people waiting to present as well. So we'll leave that slide up until the next person presents. But I believe our next presenter is Ariana Kojikawa, Chair of the House Student Council. If you would like to update us on activities of the Student Council.
And also just to mention, so this is being recorded too, and
Yes.
it's posted on the website, so
It is.
anybody that wants to rewatch it
Yes.
too has that opportunity.
It will be on YouTube by tomorrow morning, and is actually being simulcast right now or live stream.
Okay,
Welcome.
Thank you for waiting.
no problem. To begin, we're going to recap our week before.
I think I hit it earlier and left it ajar.
Recap our spirit week before we went off on spring break. Monday was Mom Day, Tuesday was Barbecue Dad and Soccer Mom Day, Wednesday was Meal Day, Thursday was Throwback Thursday. And we are currently planning a spring pep rally for Tuesday, May 17th, which will be outside and to honor the athletic teams and play team competitions, class versus class, students versus teachers. We are trying to come up with a campus cleanup day sometime in June or Saturday when clubs or even individual students or parents could come in and plant flowers or clean up trash around the school. And voting for executive council and class officers will begin in May.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about Soccer Mom Day? And did Mr. Talamay dress up for that day?
Barbecue Dad.
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Ms. Kojikawa.
Thank you.
Our next presentation, Ms. Carla Mancuso, HPA President, update us on HPA items. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I need full disclosure because my father was the first principal of Mount Olive High School, that's why it's the Marauders. And we were called the Farmers before Sussex County was called the Farmers. When I played against Mela Trenta, our business teacher, and man, she could box out. But us farm girls came up to play Sussex County, and they really put a licking on us. But anyway, and just to say, yes, times have changed, people have changed, financial areas have changed, and I just want to thank all of you who have volunteered your services, because this is not an easy job. And Mr. Dunn, thank you for your service and the rest of your crew, because this is a thankless job. And I want to thank Dr. Ripley for meeting with me last week so we could rearrange a meeting where we were going to discuss things with the executive committee. Thank you, Dr. Ripley, for taking me, on the cuff. As far as the HPA is concerned, we have 8 more Mondays left, and we want to reflect on where we could work together more as far as the staff and administration, as to be more cohesive, because we need to reflect. This has been unusual. Last year was interesting. This is more interesting, as Marilyn Monroe would say. This is an interesting year, because you can't define what we've been through. And yes, teachers have been through the ruck and the muck, and nurses and doctors have been through the ruck and the muck, and we're still going through the ruck and the muck because it's not over with yet. So I think we need a time, and I'm sure Dr. Ripley is open to all of us to meet where we can reflect on how to better go for next year, because, I mean, every day is an adventure. And thank you for acknowledging that the staff has stepped up, because that's what we do. And we're an old staff. I'm one of the youngest of the oldest, but I'm the oldest of the youngest. I mean, how do you say this? I'm gonna be 60 years old on Christmas Day, and I've been here 22 years. And people are retiring, not because of the COVID, because it's time to retire for them. And I think we've held together as much as we could, and it's tough out there. But we're doing what we need to do, and I think we have no middle ground. We have the young and the old, and the young and the old, and there's no in between. And it's sad that the state aid has gone away, because, population goes down, and then, transportation, the cost of everything is going up, and it is what it is. So, as HPA recognizes Dr. Ripley will do the right thing. So we're here for you, and we appreciate that you're here for us, because this is not an easy job, and we do it for the kids, and that's why we're here. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. John Talmy, Principal's Report and Athletics.
Good evening, everybody. How we doing? Apologize for my dress down attire. I wore my barbecue dad outfit today, but my daughter had 2 lacrosse games, so we made it happen. So, I want to echo what Mr. Truman said, and also Ms. Mancuso. Thank you to our staff as we continue to strive to have the best learning experience that they can have. As students in the building, and challenges that arrive with that every day, but we continue to work hard on that. So thank you to our staff for all they do. A couple of student accomplishments that we've had over the course of the last month. Footloose, if you didn't get a chance, was fantastic. It was one of the quite possibly the best shows that we've seen, and we've done a lot of great shows. It's the timing of it, packed auditorium on 3 nights. Great for the students to be part of that, and they were just so excited. Ariana just had to step out, she had some studying to do, was part of that cast as well. So kudos to Mr. Riccardi and all the cast and crew. We had Kate King was chosen for the Center for Prevention, Free to Be Me, which is a stand up against alcohol, and basically publicly state that. And Kate King did a video submission to our Media Tech program, and her video was chosen. They did a virtual town hall, which they do such a great job with, sponsored by Center for Prevention, and that was last week as well. And that was something better in person, but they did it virtually. It was nice to see all the students recognized, and that's all throughout the county as well. We had another art student, Brianna Dunn, who's been recognized about 4 or 5 times this year. She was recently chosen for the New Jersey Governor's Awards in Art Education, and she'll be honored at a ceremony later on in May. So kudos to Brianna, one of our senior stellar art students that continues to shine. Our SAVE students that were led by Mrs. Jackany and the great group did a great activity for Say Something Week, and that was a national initiative. The Sandy Hook Promise Foundation, if you've probably heard of that foundation before, national coalition, and they basically want everybody to find a trusted adult, and that was kind of centered around the SAVE activity. So Jalen Morales, Joe Morales, Ariana, again, Paige Young is kind of our steering committee, and they pretty much ran the show. So they were Mrs. Jackany and designed these activities that were built around mental health awareness, finding a trusted adult, and again, one of our most active groups throughout the school year. We also have a nice little luncheon for our students of the third marking period, which will be tomorrow. So it's going to run through those individual students that were chosen and nominated by individual departments and by teachers. It's one of the most rigorous processes that we have. Teachers take great pride in nominating somebody from each department. It's a pretty cool thing when we talk to students and say, why were you nominated? And they're like, I don't know, Sally. And we talk a little bit about that. You know, it's not always about the best grade in the class, it's about who you are and what you represent. So we have Ellen Nuss for the principals, student of the marking period, Lindsay Orlana for business, student of the marking period, Julia Saminsky for English, student of the marking period, Skylar Craig for phys ed, Kyle Cairns for health, student of the marking period, Luke Malone for history, student of the marking period, Clayton Cole for math, student of the marking period, Kevin Caruso for performing arts, student of the marking period, Robert Bush for science, Aaron Damansky for tech studies, Corny Waddle for visual arts, and Sophia Fiorentino for world language. So those are our students of the third marking period, and we'll do a little luncheon to honor them tomorrow. And it's a great, obviously, it's one of my favorite days to sit with them for 45 minutes, have lunch with them, and just talk about some of them are freshmen, some of them are seniors. We have a dialogue with each other, where we're going to school, why we're selected. It's really a great opportunity for them as well. Some future events, we have a new activity this year we're trying to do on Friday, led by our seniors, which is senior college career military decision day activities. Usually we just do like a quick, everybody wears their shirts. Some of you may remember this, and then we get together for a picture this year. We're going to do a little bit more focused in the afternoon on Friday for some outside activities where the seniors get a chance to celebrate their college, career, and military choices, not just about college. We work really hard on making sure that that's a broad picture because all of those are equally important. They get a chance to wear some of their garb and their gear. We're going to do some outside activities on Friday. May 12th, we had a senior prom coming up at Corona Farms. We have a little bit of a theme here. May 19th is a junior prom at Corona Farms. So we're excited about having those spring activities again, which for many years were something that we kind of took for granted. That has always happened. So it's like my 18th prom in a row, and we're excited to be at Corona Farms. It's a little bit closer than going down to some of the places that we had to go to years ago, like the Westwood Manor and the Birchwood Manor and those places that were a long ways away. So we're happy for that. We also have our senior scholarship dinner back on the table for hopefully more of a usual dinner on May 25th at the Red Tail Lodge. You'll be getting your invitation for that as well if you have not. And we continue to work on the master schedule and flexible with that as we try to build the schedule with a lot of the things we just looked at with the budget. Obviously, having a direct impact on that as well. So that's a work in progress. Mr. John's okay, I should go over to athletics.
Please.
Okay, so Mr. Dexter gave us some reports here. I'm just going to hit some highlights. We just left a lacrosse team, Audrey Flannery. Congratulations to her. She just scored her 100th career lacrosse goal. We scored 6 goals. She scored all 6 of them. So she wanted to make sure it happened today. So it's a pretty cool thing. Right, so we were on our field, and I said to her before the game, I talked to her in the afternoon. I said, "You gonna get it?" She goes, "I don't know. She had 6 goals against Jefferson. That's pretty hard." And then all of a sudden she had 4, and then she had 5. I'm like, she's gonna get it. So that was congratulations to Audrey for that achievement, which is a pretty large accomplishment. We also had 2 track athletes this past week. Rachel Mason broke her own record for pole vault at 11 foot 7 inches. That's like really, really high. So I'm glad it's her jumping and not me. So it's her own personal record. We'll see what she does. She's a senior. Leia Rubo also broke the school record for triple jump, 36.6 1/2, which is about a foot more than the previous school record that was set in 2007. So kudos to both of those athletes for their accomplishments. We also had Leia Rubo, who did her national letter of intent signing to Fordham, which was a cool event that we had right before spring break as well. So congratulations to Leia on her accomplishments as she looks to the future, planning for that. We also have the NJSA Scholar Athlete, which is a little bit different than the Sussex County Scholar Athlete, and that was Andrew Begaud probably saw that posted out, we did that through social media. And they'll have a banquet down at Pines Manor later on in May. And last but certainly not least, we have our Hall of Fame end of year banquet back on the table again for June 8th, and Mr. Dexter coordinating that at the Lafayette House. Now it's going to go through the inductees for this year. Now we haven't had this because of COVID, so we haven't been able to have that as a ceremony. We look at that as an induction committee, and we didn't want to do a disservice to it by not having a formal event. So we kind of postponed that for the last couple of years, and we have several nominations that will be going in. Ed Spud Sanders, class of 1976, who has passed away, he will be going in. Mark Lockman, class of 1995. Brittany Curry, class of 2001. Jessica Grimm is class of 2007. She's actually going to be inducted the following year because she's getting married on the same day. I'm like, something like honeymoon, stuff like that. So she's going to be that. And then last but certainly not least, Kevin Williams, class of 1991, who just sadly actually just passed away this weekend. Tragically. So it's a tough situation because we have two individuals, one that was known obviously in advance and one that was not. So we work with the family to honor him, as we look at his athletic accomplishments here at High Point. And I think that was it for athletics. Any questions on any of those things? Thank you for your time.
And our curriculum and instruction presentation for the evening, Mr. Seamus Campbell.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I first want to talk about that incredible performance 2 weeks ago, and I have to ask, how many of you saw Footloose in the theater? Most of you, I hope.
I probably don't.
No, I'm in the movie theater back in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
First of Footloose, not the.
Because Mr. Talame did an awesome job and arranged for our students and staff to see it, something we hadn't done in years. So it was fantastic for these stars to perform in front of their peers, and then for 3 packed nights. But as the students came in to watch, for them it was sort of like what West Side Story was for us. It was sort of 30 years removed, so it was kind of a reflection on where we're at in our lives. But it was phenomenal. The students were just lights out, and it was really, it felt like a cathartic community experience where the spirit and the passion in the auditorium was just.
Is that available to watch online anywhere?
I'm not sure. I believe there are some copyright issues with
Yeah, I
that.
don't think you can.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So somebody's got a copy laying around, you gotta talk to them.
There you go, Dan. It's a cottage industry for you.
All right, good. So the Summer Academy is on the agenda for your approval this evening. And last June and July, almost 10% of our students came here in the summer and attended our Summer Academy. This was a renewal, a restoration, a rebirth after a year of struggle during the pandemic. At the Summer Academy, students engaged in core academic subjects. They engaged in team building activities and social emotional learning and other types of enrichment. We had a drug and alcohol counselor come in. We had, again, team building activities and core academic work. So we're really proud of the fact that our staff and our students responded to the pandemic and made this a reality last summer. This year, we have the same approach. The fundamental approach is for a student who failed during the year to be given the opportunity to make up work and to get some seat time and to demonstrate proficiency and to learn and to have their grade restored to the point where they can pass for the year. And of course, that positions them in a position to succeed. When students fail multiple courses and they come back in September taking 2 Englishes and 2 maths, they are on a path that is very difficult to sustain. So that's the crux of it, but we also add in a lot of different ways to support students. And we believe that it supports the whole student, again, the social and emotional part, and we're hoping to have more enrichment components this summer that go beyond remediating coursework, but actually provide extension and advanced learning in a variety of areas. We do not believe we're going to need as many days as we did last year. So our plan right now is for 10 days, the last week of June into July. Transportation and meals will be provided. The courses that are remediated And you'll see here that that's the ceiling. Okay, I don't anticipate that we will hit that number, but we budgeted so that we could possibly support that number. You'll also see that the program is supported, all aspects of it are supported by specific federal grants. So we're pleased that we can offer that with our federal funding. So any questions on the Summer Academy?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say that my son was a part of it last year, and it was a big success for him because it allowed him to put that year behind him, so when he came this year, he could start fresh.
Fantastic.
It's a good friend of mine.
It was. They were, students were great and the staff was great. So we, next week, sorry, not next week, a month from this week, we will have our final state assessments. This has been a tough year because in order to meet federal requirements, they made us make up last year's assessments. So we had formal state testing in September, then we did a new assessment in March, and now we have our traditional assessment in May. We hope that next year there will be fewer tests. We are not anti-test. We believe a high-quality assessment can be a valuable tool. We do believe that it is in the student's best interest that we could reduce testing. So we look forward to that next year. Nonetheless, from May 23rd to May 27th, we will have the freshman test in English and math and juniors test in science. In previous years, what we often did is we would try and put testing into a 2 or 3 day window and really condense it because it can be rather disruptive. This year, we're taking a different approach. Monday through Friday, we will test for 2 hours, and for each of the 5 days, we will then follow with our typical 6 instructional blocks so that all students, those who test and those who don't test, will have a full day of school following that 2-hour block. Now, for seniors who have missed out on a lot, I don't think they'll be too upset to be provided with a delayed start to the school day for that entire week. So seniors can come in late. If the transportation needs are such, we will be able to support them coming here on time. Sophomores will have an enrichment activity during those 2 hours in the morning, as will juniors on the 2 days that they don't test. So what we like about it is the fact that we can really focus on the testing, not have the staff and students overly stressed out. The first 2 hours, that's all we're doing. Enrichment is kind of elsewhere. And then when testing ends, we have a full day of instruction for all students. So next week, we begin AP testing. We're very proud of our AP program, our participation in particular. Our 17 teachers, our 300 students, and 25 subjects will test next week, and hats off to them. They've worked incredibly hard, and I want to say a special thank you to Mrs. Beth Walton, who for the last decade has been our AP test coordinator, and she's talked about coming out of retirement next year maybe to run it. She's probably listening right now, so that was a joke. I don't think she will. But we want to thank her for really doing an incredible job in supporting our staff and our students that are in that. And last 8 weeks to go. It's always fun to look on social media to see it's warm out, kids are smiling, and the last 2 months is loaded with really fun and engaging activities. So that's it. Any questions?
It's nice to see their smiles, right?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see their faces.
All right, that wraps up our presentation, so we're gonna move on. We have no other business, so straight into action items. Curriculum, instruction, and technology. This is
So, just recognition for action items 1, 2, and A, 1, 2, and 3, for faculty attendance rate, 94.6%, student attendance rate, March is 92.8%, and then the suspension report, which was attached. Looking to move items 4 through 16, I believe it is, yes. So 4 is recommending to approve the HIB report as attached, 5 curricular and co-curricular field trips as attached, number 6 professional development as attached, number 7 the limited certification 5-year pilot program as attached, not a text, I'm sorry. The number 8 is revisions to the, Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Grant. Number 9 is, the extension of the Comprehensive Equity Plan through, 22-23 school year. Revision on number 10 for the 22-23 school calendar. Number 7 is approve permitting a student to finish, 11, thank you. Permitting a student who is currently a non-resident to finish the school year due to acute hardship. Number 12, the graduation date for the class of 2022 will be Monday, June 20th, beginning at 6 p.m. Number 13 is the Unified School Partnership, Special Olympics, New Jersey. Number 14 is, wait a minute, is that the Carl D. Perkins Technical Education Grant? That's like a, I thought I saw that, right?
It's a different year.
Different, oh, okay, thank you. I knew there was something we talked about earlier, okay. And number 15 is the Summer Academy for this upcoming 2022 summer. And then number 16, the grants for ESSA and ESSER 3. Making a motion, seeking a second. Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, Dr. Ripley, can you just give me like a real quick on item 7 there? Limited certification 5-year pilot program. Their 5-year experience, what is that?
Oh, so this was a pilot program that the state has put forward because of the lack of teachers and certification. So what they're doing is they're providing a pilot program that Mr. Campbell has applied for and we've been approved for in hiring teachers in subject areas of acute need, whether that be in physics or in technological education or in areas such as that, where their credentials are sufficient to otherwise be able to teach, but they may be missing some component of the process to become fully certified. And what it does is it gives some leeway for them to be able to teach while they pursue the missing component of their certification process.
So even though they're missing it, they're still gonna be going after that?
Correct.
Okay.
Did I miss anything, Mr. Campbell?
No, that's exactly right.
Anything else?
No.
Roll call, please.
Roll call?
All right. Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mr. Concord,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Ireland,
Yes.
Mr. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. Schuman,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes. Ms. Sedona is not present tonight, so I'll handle personnel items on that committee. I will move items 1 through 5, which is individual personnel items together. One is a recommendation to approve the following individuals as substitutes for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year as listed. Item 2 is a recommendation to, in accordance with the terms of the HPEA agreement, the following individuals have provided appropriate verification required for advancement on guide for the 2022-2023 school year as listed. Item 3 is a recommendation to approve the salaries for certificated and non-certificated staff members for the 2022-2023 school year as listed in attachment B1A through E. 4 is a recommendation to approve corrections to 5 of the 2021-2022 school year contract as listed in attachment B2. And item 5 is a recommendation to approve James Minkowitz as Business Administrator Board Secretary for the 2022-2023 school year at the annual salary of $141,000. County approval has already been received. So I'll make that motion on items 1 through 5. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any of those items?
Ready?
I see none. Roll call please.
Mr. Concord,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Ireland,
I will recuse myself from item number 5 as stated
previously, I'm a colleague and good friend of his wife at my school. But yes to the rest.
Alright, Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes. Extracurricular, Mr. Arnold.
I will move items 1 through 6. Item 1, it is recommended that the board accept the resignation of Jesse Strell as assistant football coach effective immediately. Item 2, it is recommended that the board accept the resignation of Seamus Campbell as assistant boys basketball coach effective immediately. Item 3, it is recommended that the board approve Cameron Lake as a volunteer assistant for boys lacrosse pending required background check. Item 4, it is recommended that the board approves Natalie Smetana as the unified track coach for the 2021-22 school year at the HPEA agreed upon stipend of $1,500. Item 5, it is recommended that the board approve June 23rd and August 4th, 2022 from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. as the dates for physicals to be performed by the school doctor for the following year's sports season. And item number 6, it is recommended that the board approve a gardening club effective for the 2021-22 school year, with Miss Dorothy Martin serving as the voluntary advisor. Make a motion seeking a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to ask quickly, I believe that Mr. Mickey Thomas likely has the record for the number of seasons coached at High Point. I'm wondering, Mr. Campbell, as we accept or the board considers your resignation, how many seasons have you coached at High Point?
A lot. When you mentioned Mickey Thomas, I really can't stand in that, but it's 40 some, 45 maybe.
45 seasons at High Point. I just wanted to recognize.
All of them winning.
Yeah. Well, we consider winning having an impact on the children of our community to
Well
make
said.
them
So
well
if we
adjusted,
don't
successful adults.
approve his resignation, does he
What
have to
happens?
keep?
It does not. As we've discussed in the past, it's a formality.
And I will just quickly thank our volunteers, both athletics and the club volunteer. Thank you for doing it. Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Conforth?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Arnold, can I ask you to handle that policy item?
Sure.
Sedona?
So there's one item under policy. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the second reading of the following new policies and regulations. And those are additional compensatory special education and related services, student assessment, and anti-hazing, all of which are mandated. So we don't really have a choice. Make a motion seeking a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Conforth?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes. We have no negotiation action items, but I will mention that we have had our first meeting with the HPAA approximately 2 weeks ago. We weren't sure without looking at our calendar, and we're looking forward to our next meeting next Tuesday with the AA. Buildings and grounds, we have no action items, but any?
You know what, I was not part of that committee meeting, but if you were there, there's a couple, I know the scoreboard is complete, right?
We apparently have working scoreboards. I don't know if they've been utilized yet. They have been.
We're on today.
Excellent. Can't wait to see them.
Briefly, if I could just mention a discussion item that came up that we've been discussing administratively for several months. Rutgers, in conjunction with Rutgers University and our Mr. Baker, there's a consideration to accept creating a, what do you call that, John?
Rain garden.
A rain garden on the campus that will be low maintenance and not require long-term maintenance, that will be student supported and will utilize water drainage from the roof, and will be able to demonstrate sustainable gardening on campus. What's that?
Practices.
Okay, practice. And they, and it's something we've been talking about for a while, and it would be no cost to the district. It's a grant funded by that group, but we wanted to discuss it, we've discussed it for a while, and I presented it this week.
I did read through that and looked at the plan that Nathaniel from the watershed had presented, I guess, back in 2019 it started possibly.
That was when I think it may have been broached. What had happened though is 2019,
Yep.
we hit a snag.
Right. Is that gonna be used as a teaching tool?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I think it's a great idea and the cost is just great.
Yeah, and a limited footprint, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Can I add that we had that, at our school, Brett McEwen,
Yeah, good, thank you.
Nathaniel Sydock came in and with all grant money used student help, and we use it to filter rainwater from the roof and parking lots so that it does not cross our small road there and get to the Pollenskill River. So it's like, it serves for many different purposes, and it's been about 7 years since we've had it, and the kids still maintain it and work on it, and it's like it's been a big accomplishment at our school, environmentally speaking, and educationally. And he's brilliant. He was really amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
They've been very
It's a
amenable.
big project, a big
Yeah.
deal.
One thing we did say is we wanted to wait until after graduation so as not to in any way impede upon the area where the people will congregate.
For pictures, that's it.
It is the location where people will be, so we don't wanna have a construction site.
Okay. That was the buildings and grounds updates. Moving on to finance. Let me get the check here. Let me move 1 through 5 together. 1 is a recommendation to accept the report of the board secretary, business administrator for the month of March 2022. Item 2 is a recommendation to accept the report of the treasurer for month of March 2022. Item 3 is a recommendation to approve the reported transfers and minimum expense transfer report for the month of March 2022. Item 4 is recommendation to approve the payment, the attached schedule of audited bills dated April 25th, 2022. And item 5 is a recommendation to accept the adult education agency account, athletic account, cafeteria account, principals petty cash account, scholarship account, school store account, and student activities account for the month of March 2022. I'll make a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments on items 1 through 5? Roll call.
Very good. Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Conforth?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Thank
Okay, I'm going to read item 6 in its entirety. Item 6, be it resolved that the board approves the following resolution for School Alliance Fund Commissioner effective March 14th, 2022 through June 30th, 2022. Whereas the High Point Regional High School Board of Education, hereby referred to as the Educational Facility, is a member of the School Alliance Insurance Fund, and whereas the School Alliance Fund requires a fund commissioner to be appointed to each educational facility, be it resolved that the High Point Regional High School Board of Education appoints the interim business administrator as the fund commissioner. Be it further resolved that the educational facilities fund commissioner is authorized and directed to execute such documents as are required by the fund's bylaws. Make that motion, seeking a second.
Second.
Any comments? None?
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Conforth?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes. Okay. I will move items 7 through 9. 7 is a recommendation to grant permission to the High Point Hoops Camp to host non-affiliated co-ed camp 5th through 8th grade. As listed, item 8 is a recommendation to grant permission to the High Point Hoops Camp to host a non-affiliated co-ed camp 1st through 4th grade, as listed. And item 9 is a recommendation to grant permission to the High Point Tennis Camp to host a non-affiliated co-ed camp ages 8 through 14, as listed. Make that motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Any comments on 7 through 9? No?
You ready? Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Concord?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunn.
Yes. We'd like to move these donation items independently, so we can recognize the donors where appropriate. Item 10, moved separately, is a recommendation by the superintendent that the Board of Education acknowledges and gratefully accepts a donation of $5,000 from a donor who wishes to remain anonymous to be used for new uniforms and merchandise for the High Point baseball team, including sweatshirts, pants, and underwear. I'll make that motion and have a second.
Second.
Any comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, if he's watching in public, thank you.
Yes.
That's all.
Thank you, Anonymous. Oh,
Okay.
roll call.
Mr. Concord?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes. Item 11 is a recommendation that the Board of Education acknowledges and gratefully accepts a donation of $1,000 to the High Point baseball team from the Rose House located in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey. I'll make that motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
And comments here?
Thank you.
Thank you to the Rose House.
Such generous people. Take
Right.
care. Thank you.
All right, ready?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Concord?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes. Okay, and then the number 12 is a recommendation that the Board of Education grant permission to apply for and receive a Unified Champion Schools grant in the amount of $2,000 from Special Olympics New Jersey for the 2021-2022 school year. Actually, let me combine that with 13. 13 is a recommendation that the board accepts the Securing Our Children's Future Bond Act School Security Grant from NJDOE, which provides funding for compliance with Alyssa's Law and proposed other school security projects in the amount of $57,350. I'll make that motion on 12 and 13.
Second.
Any comments?
I just want to thank Mr. Yardley for his role in that, thank you, and I think Mr. Rice as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Concord?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes. Let me combine 14 and 15. 14 is a recommendation that the board approves the FBLA national trip for 2 students and 1 chaperone as outlined below. Total requested from the board after student activity and student contributions will be $1,435. Item 15 is recommendation to approve and authorize the execution of the following tuition contracts between High Point Regional High School Sending and the following districts district as listed. I'll make a motion on 14 and 15.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call, please.
Mr. Concord?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes. Okay, that brings us to item 16, the big one. Again, I'll read this in full. Be it resolved that the board approves the adoption of the proposed school budget for the 2022-2023 school year as follows. Travel and related expense reimbursement. Whereas the High Point Regional High School Board of Education recognizes school staff and board members will incur travel expenses related to and within the scope of their current responsibilities and for travel that promotes the delivery of instruction or furthers the efficient operation of the school district. And whereas NJAC as listed requires board members to receive approval of these expenses by a majority of the full voting membership of the board and staff members to receive prior approval of these expenses by the superintendent of schools and a majority of the full voting membership of the board. And whereas the High Point Regional High School Board of Education may establish for regular district business travel only an annual school year threshold of $1,500 per staff member, where prior board approval shall not be required unless this annual threshold for a staff member is exceeded in a given whereas travel and related expenses not in compliance with NJAC as listed, but deemed by the High Point Regional High School Board of Education to be necessary and unavoidable, as noted on the approved High Point Regional High School Board of Education out-of-district travel and reimbursement forms. Now, therefore be it resolved, the High Point Regional High School Board of Education approves all travel not in compliance with NJAC as listed, as being necessary and unavoidable, as noted on the approved High Point Regional High School Board of Education out-of-district travel and reimbursement forms. And be it further resolved, the High Point Regional High School Board of Education approves travel and related expense reimbursements in accordance with NJAC as listed to a maximum expenditure of $75,000 for all students and board members. Adoption of the budget 2022-2023. Be it resolved that the budget be approved for the 2022-2023 school year using the 2022-2023 state aid figures, and the secretary to the High Point Regional High School Board of Education be authorized to submit the following budget to the Executive County Superintendent of Schools. And that table there is as was presented earlier in the evening, so I won't go through that in any detail. Be it resolved that the High Point Regional High School Board of Education approves the levy of general fund taxes for the 2022-2023 school budget to be $17,242,428. The 2022-2023 state aid has been reduced by $584,563. This budget addresses health and safety issues related to facility and capital projects and student-centered items and program integrity, and advertise said proposed budget in the New Jersey Herald in accordance with the form suggested by the State Department of Education and subject to law. I will make that motion. And I'm seeking a second. Any discussion or comments on item 16, budget? Anyone? I don't see any, so proceed to.
Mr. Caraza,
Yes.
Mr. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. Schuman,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Ireland,
Yes.
Mr. Conforth,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes. That concludes finance. So, transportation.
I'd like to move items 1 through 10 in transportation together. Item 1 is seeking approval to authorize a contract addendum for additional mileage for the current school year as listed. Item 2 is seeking approval and authorization for a quoted contract for school-related activities for the current school year as listed. Item 3 is seeking approval to authorize quoted contracts for school-related activities for the current school year as listed. Item number 4. There it is. Item number 4, seeking approval of a resolution for a joint transportation agreement between the Sussex County Regional Transportation Co-op and High Point Regional High School for students to special education schools for the 2022-23 school year, in which High Point will receive a 4% administrative fee. Number 5 is to approve again, a joint transportation agreement between the Sussex County Transportation Cooperative and High Point Regional High School for transportation to public school, private school, charter schools, vocational, technical, and other schools for the 22-23 school year, in which High Point receives a 2% administrative fee. Number 6 is seeking approval to again approve a joint transportation agreement between the Sussex County Regional Transportational Co-op and High Point Regional High School for anticipated athletic and field trips for the 22-23 school year, in which High Point gets a 4% administrative fee. Number 7 is seeking approval of a joint transportation agreement between High Point Regional High School and Walk Hill Valley Regional High School for anticipated transportation services for the 22-23 school year, in which High Point gets a 5% administrative fee. Number 8 is seeking approval of a joint transportation agreement between High Point Regional High School and Lafayette Township Elementary School for transportation services for the 22-23 school year, in which High Point gets a 5% administrative fee. Number 9, seeking approval of a joint transportation agreement between High Point Regional High School and Sussex Wantage Regional School for transportation services for the 22-23 school year, which High Point gets a 5% administrative fee. And last but not least, number 10, seeking approval of a joint transportation agreement between High Point Regional High School and Frankfurt Township Elementary School for transportation services for the 22-23 school year, in which High Point gets a 5% administrative fee. Making a motion, asking for a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to point out that one person does all of this. June is very talented at her job.
She's a tremendous asset.
With the help of the
Yes.
board office lead, right?
Hearing nothing else, roll call please.
All right. Mr. Klein? Ms. Schuman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Conforth?
Yes.
Mr. Caraza?
Yes.
Ms. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Thank you.
That concludes our action items. We have no legal matters. Don't believe we have any correspondence. And under miscellaneous, all we have is our standing item for the board mandated training. I don't think there's any. Oh, there are? Okay. Well, the comment is, please contact the board office if you need to have scheduled. So with that, that brings us to our second public comments session of the evening. Same stipulations apply to this session as the first. Please state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Please be mindful, respectful that your comments are being recorded. And again, we have 2 means of addressing the board in person here at the podium. And as mentioned earlier, our method for sending in questions or comments virtually is a little different now, and you had the opportunity to email them in during the duration from the first public comment session till now, or live to the address that I believe you can see on the line.
It's posted on.
Yeah, it's posted on, okay.
Yep.
So first of all, anyone in attendance would like to address the board in person, feel free to come to the podium.
Hi. Hey, everybody.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Jana Bartz, or before you know how to do. Okay, I do want to bring something up to the attention because of what I've been talking about in the past, but Governor Murphy made it very clear that it's nothing new. Since 2020, this plan has been in to implement what's going on in the schools. And New Jersey Public Schools, as of September in 2022, now this year, will be infiltrating from 5th grade on to manage adolescents that masturbating a few times a day is a healthy way to relieve stress. We're going to teach our children things that, where's the education? We're starting at 5th grade. This is what is Governor Murphy and this 2020 plan, he says it's nothing new. This has been in the plan since 2020. So where is this okay to tell a 10-year-old child that it's okay to do this? And when do you teach that in a school? And then by the time they're getting here to the high school and all of this stuff is being infiltrated because it's called ESSER money. I know y'all are allowing the ESSER money to come in to do this stuff. So my issue is my grandson that's coming here to this high school next year doesn't need to be taught all this crap that is going on, that is getting ready to be let out from according to our so-called governor. I do not appreciate that. I think the parents should have that proper ability to teach their children about sexual education, and it should not be coming from the schools in the manner like this is being taught to 10-year-olds, and it's gonna be taught to 10-year-olds. I don't agree with this. And I hope that you all are watching because we are in Sussex County and we're supposed to be a republic out here. And we're
where are your morals and your values?
Ma'am, I'll have to, just,
Mr. Conforth, just, if you
Where,
would, let her finish her comments, and if you have any.
but where are morals and values for where we teach our children still today, for just math and reading and writing and education? Since when do we start teaching at young ages to do stuff like this? This is not right.
I agree with you. And unfortunately, I wish I could do something as a board member up here, and I can't.
But you're all accepting ESSER money. You're accepting
I'm not
money from
accepting
the
ESSER money.
government.
And the government, I mean,
paying
you
you
know.
money to do what you're doing. That's the truth.
But if you were here earlier and it just accepting money, government money, the budget, was a big discussion tonight. And it did cover shortages budgets, cuts, less money coming in. I'm not an expert on ESSER money, I'm new to the board. But I can't control what the administration of the state of New Jersey does or pushes. I don't agree with it.
We the people.
Let me just bring a little clarity. ESSER funds have nothing to do with that which you're addressing.
But the ESSER funds are paying
No, ma'am.
for the extra
Let
monies
me
coming into
bring
the schools
clarity.
right now.
Ma'am, you had your 3 minutes now.
I know, but they are
Okay.
paying for what's coming into the schools. So that's
If
what
you'd
I'm
like,
trying to
I can
understand.
provide you some clarity. The ESSER funds have nothing to do with the curriculum to which you're making reference. And I would suggest also that subsequent to publishing the curriculum that this state put out, they also provided a clarification to that stated that curriculum remains a local determination, and that the board is mindful of the community and what we believe is appropriate for our students, none of whom are 10, but
I understand
I don't
that,
think you don't
but
really
can
want
I
to
ask
listen
this
to me, so
question
I'm trying to
because
bring
of Governor
clarification,
Murphy?
and you're not listening to what
But
I'm saying.
because of
Ma'am,
Governor
we thank
Murphy
you for your
saying that
comments
it's
and your
20,
opinions. Your 3
because
minutes
of
are up.
Governor
We're going to
Murphy
move on.
saying that
Ma'am,
this
we're going
is-
to move on to some other.
But
Public
Governor
comments.
Murphy said that this was going to start in September.
I don't see Governor Murphy at this table.
I know that, but he said that this is in place, this is starting in September for
Again,
the new school year.
I did bring clarity to that, and I'm afraid you're,
I just
with all
wanna
due
make sure
respect.
you're not gonna follow with,
No, what I said was that the governor has implemented a skills-based curriculum that states that curriculum remains a local determination. These are the skills that are to be taught. These are the areas that are to be taught. It is a local determination. And so what you may read there, first of all, we don't educate 10-year-olds here, but we do have local discretion as to how those skills-based New Jersey student learning standards are disseminated.
I hear you, it's just Governor Murphy made it very clear that this is coming out in
Thank you for your
September.
comments.
Thank you, yeah.
Is there anyone else present here or online that would like to make some public comments? Can I check our email? None? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to close our second public comment session.
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. We have our non-committee board member reports and comments. If anyone is so inclined.
How's that food bank coming? We good? We're in good shape with food bank?
it's rocking.
All right.
Excellent. Then the only other remaining item is our other business, and this is just for informational purposes. Public disclosure of, in accordance with the Open Public Records Act, High Point Regional School Board Office has received and responded to the following OPRA requests over the past month, and that is as listed. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
In a second.
Second.
All All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?